In this video, I'm going to show you how to adjust your Barebow tiller. That's the difference in distance between the top limb in the string and the bottom limb in the string. And I'm going to show you how to adjust it to make it easier for you to aim in the middle while shooting Barebow. So, second video in the new studio. I've made a little bit of adjustments acoustically, so let me know if you notice a difference in the audio quality, if it's a little less echoey, or if I still need to make more adjustments. I can still hear a little bit by ear right now. We'll see what happens when I sit down and edit the video, but I'd be interested to know what you think, if it's any better, or if I need to make any more adjustments to make it even better for you. But just let me know, because I'm interested. I promised in the last video describing to you about how and where to set up your Barebow weights for the proper balance while at full draw, and the reaction of the bow after the shot. I teased that I was going to be talking about how to adjust your tiller to make it easier to hold in the middle as well. If you haven't seen the video where I talk about setting up your weight system on your Barebow riser, I will have links in the description below, plus a card at the top up there for you to check out in case you haven't seen that yet. I would watch that video because it's a great place to start when it comes to worrying about how to set up your Barebow to help hold more steady. And without that, I wouldn't really start with doing the tiller stuff until you've adjusted the weights on the actual bow and gotten it close to how you like it. I have to describe to you what tiller is first and how you measure it. You need a bow square, something like this. This is an L square. They have T squares as well. I will also have links in the description below for the tools that I'm using in this video in case you don't have one yet. So the way you measure tiller is you measure from the base of the limb where it meets the riser to a 90-degree angle to the string. And I've got 6 1/8 on this top setting. And on the bottom here, I have 6 3/8. So you might be thinking, why isn't that even? Your limbs are supposed to be even, or who knows what you may be thinking. Depends on how new you are and how much Barebow you have shot. Well, when it comes to Barebow setup and recurve setup, you can adjust the tiller to make it feel slightly different to you, as well as to make it potentially easier for you to shoot. In recurve archery, I suggest adjusting the tiller to make it feel comfortable on your fingers while at full draw, and then adjusting your stabilizers to make you hold still. Well, in Barebow, we don't really have stabilizers to adjust at all, so I think Barebow ends up being a bit more critical in regards to what the bow does while at full draw, specifically during the aiming process, because you want the bow to work with you while aiming. You don't want to fight it. Now, what do I mean by fighting the bow? What I mean by that is if I were to be aiming in the middle, aiming at you, the camera, and for whatever reason it's just like I'm having to force and struggle to keep my arm up. It keeps wanting to aim in the middle and it's just like it dips and I'm just forcing to have to lift it up. If that happens, you can actually adjust the balance of your limbs to help hold you up a little bit easier. Normally in Barebow, people recommend to start with an even tiller. That would mean the difference in distance from this limb to the string versus this limb to the string is 0. No difference at all. And that works fine for a general setup and initial setup, especially when you're not crawling on the string very deep. String crawling meaning when the arrow is on the string, on the nock, this would be 3 fingers below the nock, touching the nock. String walking is when you start going down the string and you shoot shorter distances. When you start string walking and you go way down the string, what you do is you actually start to load up this bottom limb more than the top limb. In other words, you're drawing the bottom limb further back than the top limb. And because of that, that bottom limb is stronger and it ends up trying to pull you down, and it makes it difficult to actually hold that bow up in the middle, especially when shooting further distances. So what you can do is you can actually adjust the tiller split, the difference between the two measurements, to work with you to help actually hold that arrow up in the middle. And I have not gotten to the point of where I've had my tiller so out of whack that it's been pulling me up and I had to keep forcing my arm down. I think if you have that scenario, you got something funky set up on your system here, and you know, you may need to make some adjustments, or your tiller split is way far outside of a normal range of adjustment. Now, a normal range of adjustment is going to be anywhere from even, that means both of them the same distance, to about 1/4 of an inch to a little bit more than that, bigger on the bottom than the top. That means if the top here on this particular bow is 6 1/8, And on the bottom here, it's 6 3/8 plus, maybe a 32nd over a 1/4 of an inch split. The reason that this bow has such an extreme tiller difference is because this weight of the bow with this weight on the riser, this happens to be my wife's bow, it's at the very upper end of what she's possibly capable of holding up while shooting 50 meters. The bow's just a little bit too heavy for her mass weight wise, but there's really no other option because lowering the bow weight of the bow is not really a good idea at this point because it is so light and she's just not very strong when it comes to shoulder strength. Yeah, she's realized that since shooting archery. So we're trying to have it still be heavy enough where it still holds stable, but then using the tiller to actually enhance the ability for her to hold the bow up without straining so much on the left side and the bow side to actually hold this up. So as you start shooting, you might want to pay attention to your sight picture. Even if you're not necessarily feeling like you're struggling to keep that arrow up in the middle while you're aiming, or you notice that the arrow sits there and it wiggles and moves and it dips and it wiggles and it moves and it dips. If this is happening, then I would say absolutely you need to reduce the tension on the bottom limb or add tension on the top limb. It's very simple and easy to change this tiller split, and I'm going to show you how to do it right now. All you need is an Allen wrench, and it's a simple balancing equation. If you want this measurement to be bigger on the bottom, that means it needs to be weaker compared to the top limb. Because if it was stronger, if the limb was stronger, look what it does to the tiller here. It makes it shorter here, and look what making the top stronger does to the bottom. It actually grows it. Do you see how it grows on the bottom and shortens on the top? That would be if you made the top limb tighter. So what you can do is you simply crack your limb bolts free, and then you can increase on the top, or because this bow's limb bolts are basically bottomed out all the way, if I wanted to increase my tiller split, I would loosen the bottom limb bolt and back it off a certain amount. If you didn't want your bow weight, your draw weight specifically, to change at all, you would loosen the top limb bolt equal to the amount that you tighten the bottom limb bolt, or vice versa, depending on the direction you want to shift your tiller. Again, if you want it bigger on the bottom, loosen the bottom, tighten the top. If you want it shorter on the bottom, tighten the bottom, loosen the top. How much adjustment will it take in order for you to notice a difference is really relative to you and how sensitive you are to noticing what the bow is doing while at full draw. I can tell you that every single person that I've worked with while coaching and have adjusted their bow while I've been working with them, because oftentimes they'll come to me with a bow that is set up for a split finger shooter, which means that you usually shoot with one finger above and two below the arrow. That's split finger shooting. That's a typical shooting style for Olympic style recurve. And shops that are familiar with Olympic style recurve will set it where the bottom limb is 1/8 of an inch shorter than the top. That's typical when it comes to recurve archery. But Barebow is, again, at least minimum, if not bigger on the bottom, opposite of recurve archery. So like I said, people that I have coached that have come to me with a bow that was set up at a recurve shop, they have a recurve tiller set up, and I ask them, hey, do you ever notice you're struggling with aiming, trying to hold it up in the middle? They say, nah, I think it's fine. And I say, all right, well, why don't we just try your tiller? Let's try to adjust it just for the fun of it. We can always put it back. And that's something that you need to remember, and something that you can do at home. If you're gonna make these adjustments, take a Sharpie, make a line on your limb bolt and make a line on your riser. Have those two line up where you currently have your bow set up, make your adjustments, and if you don't like it, just put it back exactly where it was. Really isn't hard to do at all. It's just if you go through that and you make marks and indications of where you currently are, or at least notes on a notepad, when you make these adjustments, if you don't like them, you can always go back. So anyway, those people that I have worked with, I've taken them from 1/8 of an inch shorter on the bottom to 1/8 of an inch bigger on the bottom, or even just made them even. And after their first shot, they're like, oh, wow, it is much easier to hold in the middle. It requires far less energy to make that arrow that you use as a reference to keep it staying in the same spot while at full draw, while trying to actively aim and execute the shot. So what that means is you end up needing to spend not only less energy throughout the day to help hold that bow arm up to aim properly, but you spend less mental energy and you exert less effort while the shot is going on, so you can spend more time and more effort thinking about your form, your technique, and trying to maintain composure and control no matter the situation, no matter the amount of pressure, no matter who's watching, no matter what's on the line. It allows you to be more in tune with yourself and struggle less with keeping that arrow up in the middle. Even if it's not a struggle yet, I think it would be worth it for you to potentially try messing around with your tiller split to make it easier to hold that arrow in the middle. Now, yes, adjusting your tiller does change your knocking point height, which does change your tune. You can always adjust the knocking point, you can always adjust the tune after the fact. Once you get the bow holding relatively good for you, meaning it's relatively easy, you're not really overexerting to try to hold that arrow up in the middle. Once you're at that point, then work on tuning and setting up and doing things. So I've noticed that definitely not shooting a recurve tiller split is gonna be important, and I found that going more negative is even better, meaning bigger on the bottom, pushing that 1/4 inch rough rule of thumb boundary is ideal in my scenario. I found that shorter bows or deeper crawls on the string means you're gonna need more of a negative tiller split, a bigger measurement on the bottom than top, even more so than a 1/4 inch potentially. Once you get to a really, really long bow setup, like this 75-inch Hoyt Exceed behind me, that's behind the ATF-X back there, that will need less of a negative tiller split to have that same feel because the limbs are so much longer and you're not loading one more than the other, nowhere near what you would be on this bow here, which is a 66-inch bow. And there are risers out there, such as the Gilo GT, I believe, that are asymmetrical. They have different measurements of distance from the grip down to the bottom pocket versus the grip to the upper pocket, and that requires even less of a negative tiller split. So there's no real general rule of thumb other than anywhere from 0 to a 1/4 inch bigger on the bottom. That's your rough range of adjustments. You can go outside of that if you want to play with it, but it's really going to come down to you playing with it and seeing how adjusting the tiller different amounts affects how your aiming pattern looks, and ultimately whether you not like it or not. And if you don't, just go back to where you were because you made those marks and it's not that hard. If you wouldn't mind, comment below and let us know what tiller split you are using, what bow setup you're using, and how much of a tiller split you are using, because people out there, they're always looking for good resources and looking to see and validate their own findings and discoveries. So I think it would be interesting to see if there's a correlation between bow manufacturers or something along those lines to see what people are using as far as tiller settings are concerned. I'm uploading every Thursday and Saturday now, so if you haven't yet, hit that subscription button and the notification bell. It'd be really helpful, helps this channel out. You get notified when I upload new content as well. And like I said, let me know what you think acoustically about this, this studio. And I'd be interested to see if you think it's better or not.